You're listening to the Exhibitionist podcast, brought to you by InspiringExhibitors.com and Pro Extra, a wholly owned division of 12th Man Solutions Limited.
A very happy new year and welcome to the first episode of The Exhibitionist, the podcast for 2019. Or alternatively, we might call it the Wheezy and Sneezy Show. I hope none of you have been subject to some of the cold and flu bugs that we've had in our offices over the last few weeks. But I hope if you did, it didn't spoil your Christmas and you've had a brilliant festive season. So now you're back in the office and planning all your fantastic trade show campaigns for 2019. And we'll be shortly handing over to our guest for this week, who is Gabriela Castro Fontoura from Sunny Sky Solutions in Latin America. Before we get on to that interview, though, we just wanted to highlight a couple of things that had come out from last week's CES show in Las Vegas. If you received our newsletter last week, you'll have seen that we referenced a couple of campaigns that had been run by exhibitors in the run-up to show to demonstrate how they had used trade media and digital and other tactics to make sure the people they wanted to speak to actually found them. It is, after all, a show that gets about 180,000 visitors. So if you can imagine being there for 5 days and trying to see the people you want to see in and amongst 180,000, you've got to be really sure about your proposition and getting in touch with the right people before the show doors open. So if you don't know CES, it is the big consumer tech show of the year, and it has everything from self-driving suitcases to fully automated dog toilets, who knew we needed those, to robots, smart alarm clocks, and probably what you've heard most about, the foldable tabs and phones. But there are a couple of examples of really high-profile brands where it can show that no matter how much money you have to invest in a trade show, sometimes the simple things that you forget are lost, and they can really affect how visitors perceive what would have been a great execution. If you pop over onto YouTube, there are some videos of the Google roller coaster that you might have read about. And this was for visitors to get on a little train and go through a journey effectively through a home and show all the different ways in which Google Assistant or Alexa can help you live your life. So it'll be things like Google lock the door, Google pull up an email, Google tell me about the recipe for that brilliant cake, and all the different ways you go through a bedroom and a kitchen and then out into the open air and then back into the house again. There's some quite scary characters along the way, I thought, but it didn't go very fast, so it's not the most exciting roller coaster ever. And a couple of people, when they've come off that, have said, yeah, it was fun and unique, it was different, they've obviously invested a huge amount in the show, but why? I've not come away from that knowing anything different than I knew before. I know I can use Google in lots of ways in my house and running my life, but I don't for whatever reason. I either choose not to or I forget, and going for 5 minutes on a roller coaster probably isn't going to change that. So it was the real highlight of the show. It's been talked about a lot. It's had a lot of press coverage. But what did it actually mean? What was it for? The second example is LG. So a huge global company, and the introduction of their OLED roll-up TV. Now, this is essentially a television screen that rolls down into a box so that you don't have to have the full structure of the TV in your room at any time. It's a really highly anticipated piece of kit, and people have been talking about it for quite a long time. But yet, when one of their senior salesmen or company directors was being interviewed, the interviewer asked them, so what price would I be expecting to pay for this? And the response was, I don't have that information for you yet. And the presenter then asked, well, is it millions or is it billions? And again, the response was, yeah, that's not information we've got to share with you today. Well, that's the kind of information that people would really, really want to know, even if it's a ballpark figure. I think it's all very well teasing people, but actually that just kind of makes you look slightly unprepared and as though you're rushing a bit of tech out. I'm sure that wasn't LG's strategy. I'm sure they'd got a really good reason for why they weren't sharing pricing in a really complex route to market. But it just, to me, felt like it fell a little bit short of one of the most crucial bits of information. So with all this amazing tech on show and all these gadgets and gizmos, who actually won the award for Best of the Best at CES? Actually, it was a burger. And it's the Impossible Burger that is made in a laboratory, and the fact that it is made in a laboratory means that it is eligible to exhibit at CES because it is officially tech. So it was more for people about the experience of it being very meat-like, enjoyed eating it, thought it was a fantastic improvement on anything that had gone before. And despite all that amazing tech that's supposed to make our lives easier, it was actually something that delivered a great experience that won the day at the tech show. So if you get a chance, I can highly recommend nipping onto YouTube and having a look at some of the highlights videos from CES. There's a huge amount of money spent there, and you might pick up an idea or two. We'll pop a couple of links on our LinkedIn page and the website, so you can pick up those videos from there. So on today's episode, we are speaking to Gabriela Castro Fontoura, who runs Sunny Sky Solutions, which is all about making it easier for businesses to meet, network and sell to other businesses in Latin America. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, I have absolutely no intention of ever exhibiting in Latin America, so why is this podcast going to be of any use to me? Well, actually, it might just make you stop and think about how to prepare for going overseas, how different markets can be, how slow things can be in different parts of the world if you're used to exhibiting in Europe. There's still lots of handy hints and tips and advice in there from Gabby that will help you wherever you're planning on exhibiting, even if it's not Latin America. So I'm going to throw over to Gabby and enjoy the episode. So on this edition of the podcast, we are delighted to have all the way from Uruguay, Gabriela Castro Fontoura joining us. And Gabby is a director of Sunny Sky Solutions, which is an organisation which makes it easier to do business in Latin America. So welcome to the show, Gabby.
Thank you.
So if you want to start just by giving us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and a background to your experience in trade shows.
Well, I started Sunny Sky Solutions when I was still living in Yorkshire, actually in Skipton, about 7 years ago. And the idea is to make it easier for UK companies to do business in Latin America. And that inevitably involves trade shows at different stages, whether it is when you're looking at the markets, whether it's when you're launching a new product, or when you're starting to do business, or even then later when you're more established.
It sounds exciting and interesting. So tell me more about what's happening in Latin America at the moment and what the region can offer to businesses in the UK who are looking to export over there.
Well, Latin America, first of all, it's a region. So it's 20 different countries, ranging from Chile, Brazil, Honduras, Cuba, Bolivia, a wide range of very different countries. It's 600 million people. And most of these countries have been growing steadily over the last 15 years. So you have to think, a lot of people joined the middle class. A lot of these countries have really, grown quite dramatically over the last 10, 15 years, which means there are opportunities in education, financial services, infrastructure, of course. A lot of people now aspire to maybe have holidays or buy things they weren't able to buy before, from food and drink through to whether it can be healthcare, education, and so on. So it's a very exciting time for the region because, there's a lot going on. It's a very dynamic, very young region as well. So there's opportunities in, I would say, almost every sector, as well as the most traditional sectors like agriculture, mining, and the like. So there's opportunities for UK companies that think, long term, and they're willing to invest the time, the money, and the people that it takes to break into the region.
So it sounds from what you're saying that there's a huge amount of growth and a huge amount of social change that's happening in the region. But you talk in your blog about the pace of doing business in Latin America. It can sometimes be quite slow. So what are some of the challenges that this can create for businesses who are wanting to export to the region?
Yeah, I would say that's probably the most frustrating bit, even for me, on a daily basis of doing business in Latin America. I lived 13 years in the UK. And when I came back to live in Uruguay, the pace, you have to go from fifth gear to first gear. It's very, 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 very slow. And that's partly because business is very personal. So it takes time to build those relationships. If you think about the UK, I don't know, 30, 50 years ago, sort of local village type business arrangements and very personal, based on handshaking relationships, and that's what Latin America is, and that's part of the charm as well. But it takes time. And I would say, first of all, be committed, particularly senior management. You know, when I speak to clients, it cannot be the guy sitting down on the export side of things in the corner that has to deal with the whole thing. Everybody has to be committed, because when there's problems, when things slow down dramatically, you have to have a management that's really convinced that this is the way forward and that's very committed. So commitment is the first thing. You have to have the financial backing. So if you're going to just throw £5,000 and say, well, let's see what happens in Latin America, it's not going to work. You don't need to be a massive company. You can be an SME. I mean, we work with small companies all the time, but they need to put the cash in the long-term sort of 5-year plan, at least 5 to 10-year plan. And you have to be very patient. If you're in a rush, if you're trying to close a deal within 3 months or 6 months, it's not going to happen. So you need to relax and trust a local partner. That's why it's so important to find somebody local that you trust, because remotely is going to be, as I said, it's very personal. So remotely is going to be very, very difficult. You need to trust, whether it's a consultant, a distributor, an agent, a joint venture partner, a franchisee, a licensee, whoever it is, you need to trust the local person. And that trust is going to basically tell you whether the pace is low because that's the way it is, or is it somebody that's taking advantage of the situation, but you need to build that trust. Long distance.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about the personal relationships in that bit and how it can take time, and it's getting to know people and spending time building those relationships. And I think that's the beauty of exhibitions and trade shows, really, is it's that first point of starting to build some trust and build a relationship for the future. It's not about selling a load of your product on the day. So thinking about exhibitions and trade shows in Latin America, what are some of the key industries that hold events there? What would be the big exhibitions that perhaps our listeners might have heard of that are in the region?
Well, it's the whole exhibition side of things is not as developed as it is in the US or Europe. And it's also important to know that Latin Americans travel a lot to exhibitions in other countries. So you have to be prepared if you're going to go to the Middle East to an exhibition, or to the US or even Europe. You have to be prepared for Latin American, whether it's clients or potential partners, to come and visit you. That happens again and again in every industry. But in Latin America, I would say there's exhibitions in every country, and that's important to know. There are not many exhibitions that are sort of region-wide. They tend to be very fragmented by country, because every country works in a different way, and they're very niche. So and they also vary a lot in quality. So, for example, in food and drink, there are very good exhibitions, like Expo Alimentaria, which is well known in Mexico, Peru, and other countries. Recently, we had a client who went to a glass show in Sao Paulo, in Brazil. So that's very specific for people that work in glass. I've seen cybersecurity, fintech, kind of trade shows, construction infrastructure, that's metros, anything to do with railways, that's starting to get going now. Mining is one that's got some of the best shows, more developed or more advanced in terms of shows. Agriculture, there are very, very good agricultural shows in many countries, like in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay, Paraguay. Energy as well, so anything to do with energy and oil and gas and utilities. There's very good trade shows, but you need to research a bit, because there's some really bad trade shows as well. So you need to do that. That's what I'm saying about doing some research and trusting a local partner and having those conversations and saying, is it really worth exhibiting here? Is it worth visiting? So much as people will tell you they don't even visit them. So that's why the local side of things is important.
And just picking up on what you were saying there about a lot of Latin American businesses travelling to other shows in other countries, which I think is really interesting. So, Gabby, I'm guessing our listeners could get in touch with you if they wanted some advice on where you think businesses from your region are travelling to, if they wanted to know which shows in other countries that would be valuable for them to exhibit at.
Yes, I mean, if there's any really big worldwide shows, say, for example, Cial in Paris or Cial in the Middle East, for food and drink, they will be there. If it's, there is their show in Vegas, for example, in Las Vegas, which is, I don't know, for your industry. Or, for example, I know in the nursery goods industry, there's a very big show in Germany. If there's that sort of big show, you know that they will be there, and it's good to be prepared, because otherwise they feel very neglected. That they're gone a very long way, and maybe you're focusing on the US or the Middle East or Europe, and you're missing an opportunity to probably visit the most committed distributors that also got the most money to invest in this trip. So they're already telling you they know the sector, that they're willing to invest time to know, to get to know the latest technologies or innovations or whatever. And they actually have the financial backing to finance one of these trips. So those are very good signals that you shouldn't miss. And it doesn't hurt having either a brochure in Spanish, or maybe even sort of write down their names. I know a client of mine just went to Innotrans, which is the railway show in Germany, it is. And they went to a big utility show in France. And what they did is that they took notes from the conversations with Latin American potential clients and potentially really big clients and distributors, and they pass them on to me. So then I can follow up and I can pass them on to the distributor here. So these people feel they've been looked after. Not that they just turned up to the stand and people just had a friendly chat and that was it. They know that, the notes that I read was such and such is interested in this technology because they're thinking of this substation in X country and so on. So the conversation I can have with them is so much more advanced. So the other thing is to then follow that up, because you will want to know what your return on investment is from having gone to that show in Paris or the Middle East or whatever. So if a sale eventually, happens in Latin America, it might have paid off your whole going to Dubai or whatever.
That makes sense. And you just alluded to there briefly about using Spanish as a language. Are there any languages or cultural differences that perhaps UK-based companies would need to be aware of for thinking about doing business in Latin America?
In Latin America, there's two main languages, which are Portuguese for Brazil, and that's Brazilian Portuguese. It's not Portuguese from Portugal. And then there's Spanish for the rest of the continent. So if you're coming over to Latin America to exhibit, or if you're going to walk a show, it's important to have your materials translated, even if it's just one brochure. I know particularly SMEs don't have maybe the cash just up front to finance translating every single technical brochure, corporate brochure. But even if you have 2 sides of A4 in Spanish, and I mean Latin American Spanish, not Spanish from Spain, which is almost insulting to most of the region. It's a decent professional translation, not a Google Translate one. Just invest in 2 sides of A4. Doesn't take any. It can be 50% images anyway. So a little bit of decently translated text. In Portuguese, if you're going to go to Brazil, in Spanish, if you're going to the rest of the region, it just pays off. It just shows that you cared enough to have translated materials. Will they understand English? If it's very technical, probably. The more technical, the easiest it is. But it just shows that little bit of care. I mean, I remember once there was a English company in a show, a very, very massive show, £20,000 it cost them to exhibit there and to pay for and they had all the materials in Spanish and in English, and this was in Brazil. It's so insulting for a Brazilian to be given information in Spanish. It's like saying, I couldn't be bothered to make the effort, and you kind of understand it anyway because they sound quite similar. It's really not right. If you're going to make a £20,000 investment to go and exhibit somewhere, you're going to send somebody and samples and all the like, then why not make the effort, pay another £500 and have a really good translation of just at least one flyer. And the other thing is to make sure that you've got the sample, talking about samples, the samples and all the exhibition aids cleared in customs before. But with plenty of time. We've had last week somebody that was trying to exhibit in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and there was a problem with customs, and it took them about 6 weeks to get the stuff out of customs. They had to pay a fortune and they missed the deadline, so they didn't have the materials to exhibit in the show. I had that before in Brazil in the same show. You walk around and you see a lot of empty stands, and then you ask people, where are your samples? They didn't even have the business cards, loads of this. And why? Because they didn't organize this with loads and loads of times. I mean, some countries are a lot easier. Chile will be easy. Peru, Colombia, they tend to be easier to let temporary admission of exhibition samples and aids and that. The countries like Brazil are notorious for being so difficult. and very rational as well. You don't understand what went wrong if you did all the paperwork correct. So you have to allow plenty of time and be very creative on the way that you're going to ship the things, the samples or the aids. So the business cards, the brochures, get them printed locally, organize somebody to take them rather than try to get everything from the UK, because there's one slight glitch with customs or one strike or anything, and you missed, you wasted £20,000 investment in a trade show because your brochures weren't there, your business cards weren't there, your samples weren't there.
It's heartbreaking. We've worked with clients in the past who tell us stories of when they've tried to do things, save a little bit of money, and then things have got impounded. People just shipping samples of water, and just water where it's one ingredient, bottles of water that have been, impounded at the port. So it's so reassuring to hear that happens all around the world. And people think we're making these stories up when we're giving our horror story examples, but it does happen. And for anybody who's listening, we would say use the freight forwarders that are recommended by the show, because they know what they're doing. And if you're UK based, get in touch with the Department for International Trade, because they're the guys who can really help you with missions and getting your kit and your equipment over there. Because as you say, there's nothing worse than having spent £20,000-30,000 on something and not being able to exhibit it. You're never going to get your money back on that.
But contact them also, contact them with plenty of time, because it's not worth it contacting them a week before because you didn't get the samples. There's nothing they'll be able to do, whether it's from DAT, the embassies, the customs broker. I can't do anything. If you got your samples stuck in customs a week before a show, it's very unlikely I'm going to be able to do anything. It's very, as I said, we're talking about the pace. Everything's slow. Nobody's going to rush because you didn't do your work on time. They're going to take it easy, and you are, you're rushed. They aren't. So if you're going to ask for help, ask with plenty of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So just thinking about those services and support, what is there that's available in the region to help exhibitors who might be nervous about coming out to Latin America and exhibiting for the first time? It's a really big step, and you can understand why they'd be anxious. So what support is there through organisations like yourself or other companies to help those first-time exhibitors?
Well, first of all, I would say before you exhibit, you need to be sure why you're exhibiting and where. So it might be better to say, for example, we offer a service by which we walk a show before. So you say to me, I'm thinking about exhibiting at, Tecnofita, which is a food technology show in Argentina. Do you think it's the right show for me? So I might go take pictures, talk to people, get the brochure, which, by the way, you cannot download ever online. You have to go there and buy it or get it there. And then we do that. And then you might be more or less convinced that it's the right show for you. You might want to come over the year before or the edition before and walk the show yourself. And you need to understand why you're doing this. Are you absolutely convinced? Have you done enough research on that particular market to justify? Don't just land in a trade show just because it's fun or just because somebody pushed you to do it. You have to be very prepared. You need to understand the market, because otherwise, when people start asking questions at the show, it's not going to look good on you if you just clearly don't understand what you're doing there. If you're exhibiting, people will expect that you will have done all your market research before. The exhibition is the last thing you do. It's not the first thing. You could walk the show before as part of your market research, but you don't invest a lot of money in exhibiting if you don't know, first of all, whether there is demand for your products and services, whether you can meet that demand at the right price. So you need to do all that prep work before. And then if you're really convinced, or you think, well, I want to have a go and this will help me decide whether it's right for me or not, there's a lot of support from DAT and the embassies and consulates. And you could go as part of a British freight mission or a British pavilion. Some companies like that, some don't, but it could, make you feel a little bit more secure, I would say. As I said, they're not just professional trade shows here. In general, some of them are sort of, world class, but 95% aren't. So, your expectations have to be adjusted to the fact this is not a German show. This is a different kind of thing. And of course, there's consultants like yourselves that can help, and also potential distributors who probably have gone to 20 editions of the same show and can tell you where to put the stand, where not to put it, what day to maybe invest in more people at the stand, or what talks to go to, or who to be next to, or who to network with, and and all that. So these people have been doing this for years, maybe decades. They'll be the best people to ask for help. There's a chambers of commerce as well. But it's the interest of your company you have to have in mind, because some organizations love to do trade shows, but you have to think whether it's the right investment at the right time in the right market, and then it could pay off. You need to have done a lot of homework before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the bit where a lot of exhibitors fall down, where they just think because a trade show seems to fit their industry, then obviously it's going to bring them loads of new customers, and actually sometimes it's just not the right place for them to be, and they don't do that homework and end up spending a lot of money being in the wrong place. So we always say, it's better to spend 2 or 3 hours doing your research on the internet and really looking at things and spending the money going and visiting than spending £30 on something and being there for 3 days and never meeting it. So if we have got some companies in the UK who have already booked to exhibit at a trade show in Latin America, how do they make the most of that investment? What do companies in Latin America really like to see from exhibitors?
Well, they want to see things that are new. You have to think, innovation, something different. You have to think that because of this growth that I was talking about, we've been bombarded by companies from all over the world over the last 10, 15 years that have shown, that have come with all sorts of products and services from Europe, the US, Japan, China, the rest of Latin America, the whole world. So, in a way, we got quite a lot of, we're exposed to a wide range of offer for all sorts of niche products and services. So you have to think what's really going to differentiate you and your products from all the rest. I mean, you'll be surprised at any show, the amount of products, the variety that we've got, the range of choice. So really, can you offer something new and original, and can you showcase that? Be creative in the way. You have to get people's attention, and Latin Americans are very emotional as well. So appeal to the emotions, appeal to the technical side, but create an impact in when you come and exhibit. Also, don't be afraid to use a Union Jack in any country in Latin America. Put the British flag there. People love it. They want to see that it's a British company. It inspires a sense of reliability, of seriousness and honesty, and all that. So it's good to either join a program like Made in Britain or whatever it is. But don't be afraid to say this has been designed or has been manufactured in the UK. And above everything, remember, it's all about relationships and it's about people. A lot more than it's about your price list or your product specifications. Is about talking to people. So go out there, talk to people, bond, go out for drinks. I think a lot of the exhibitions is at least in Latin America, are very social. Don't miss out all the sort of networking events and all that sort of, even the sort of water cooler seconds or the minutes in the cafeteria or the lunch break. Those are really, really valuable moments to bond, to talk, to establish relationships, talk to the people next to you, across from you, and just interact, just listen, more than talk, just listen to what other people are telling you. Be very humble, say, this is new to me, it's the first time here. People will immediately try to help you out. If you say, actually, don't be afraid to ask, I actually really could do with a contact in the Ministry of Health for this or that. Ask, because that person next to you might be really willing to help. People here are a lot more open about helping each other and contacts and so on. And they don't quite see the difference between this is a personal request and this is a business request. It's all very much mixed up. So don't be afraid to interact and to ask loads of questions and to listen to people.
There's so much in there that's just, people think because they're spending so much money going to exhibit somewhere like Latin America, we have to get sales on the day, we have to come back with a full order book, otherwise it's not really worth it. And you just think, that's not the point. That's not why you're going there. It is about market research. Or they go there and they do sell a lot and then find that they can't service the market and think, well, why did you go exhibit there? So
they tend to get a lot of leads when they come and they don't follow them up. That will be another thing. Yeah. They say, wow, we've been there and I've got all these leads, and they show you their Excels and they're really excited. And they say, well, how are you going to follow up? Oh, I'm going to send an email to all. I said, well, that's not going to work. You're going to have to call them. And they go, oh gosh, I got to call them all, but I don't speak Spanish. So it doesn't matter. You managed a conversation when you were there.
Sure.
But you need to pick up the phone. And they say, oh no, I sent them 10 emails and they never replied. And the guy on the other side is thinking, gosh, I went to this British stand. It was a great product. I was willing to buy this or to do some business. And all this guy does is bombard me with emails. He never called me. So that's what the cultural differences start. We don't do business by email. It's very, very hard unless it's maybe a very young person in a sector like software, say, which is IT digital side. But your typical sort of 50 to 70-year-old male that does this sort of business decision making, which is very typical, is just not moved by that. I mean, I have relationships with my distributors for 5-7 years in some case, and they still don't answer my emails. So, I still have to WhatsApp them and say, football scores and all that. But yeah, have you seen my email? Oh, yes, I did see it. Why didn't you reply? Oh, I thought you were going to call. So it's just, if all you expect to do is just to get a list of leads and then bombard them with emails, it's not going to work. So it's just adjusting that. And I can see it because when they arrive here to show, the first day you see them, they're all very, suited and very sort of, right, I've got to sell and my product is the best. And then by the third day, they're sort of, loose tie, all relaxed, having a drink, talking to the ones. And I think, you got it now. It's just, it's not about your product, it's about talking to people. And, there's some basic things as well about within the trade show, like not leaving the stand alone, which they do a lot of the times when they're driving insane, because they only could pay for one person to travel. And if that person needs to go somewhere else, it's down this end. So those sort of details, it's like you can't. But that's worldwide, it's whether you do it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's just basic stuff that's not. It's not. I remember one there was a nursery goods importer, massive one here, and they went to a show in Germany, and there was this British company, and the British guy said to me, because he's Panamanian, I was expecting him to be quite. Well, I don't know how to say it, he said, like quite poor, but the guy turns up with a Hugo Boss suit, the latest Google watch and the Mont Blanc pen, and he was like, oh, wow. And I said, well, see, your expectations of the Latin Americans are poor and they cannot afford to come to show to Dubai or in Germany. It's so wrong. The guy probably lives a much better life than you do. So it was, he said that just, for him was like, wow, I really don't understand. Right. So it's just getting used to how things work and, how people do business. The other thing is it tends to be men that travel. I just did a study for the Canadian government for female exporters in Latin America. And one of the problems they have is that when they have to travel to a show in Canada, although the woman might be the one that knows the most about the business, the owner is usually the father who asks the son to go. Right. They're still very macho dominated. So you end up getting this guy who hasn't got a clue about the business in Toronto, calling his sister because he doesn't know how things work. He doesn't know about discounts. He doesn't know input terms. He doesn't know anything. But that's, they think that it's wrong to send the woman to the show. The right thing is to send the man. And there's a lot of those things that you need to be aware of and if you go to a show here, I mean, except for sectors like education maybe, but the rest are all men. And that shocks you as a woman, particularly British woman comes here and it's like, wow, they're all men, they're like all middle-aged men. What's wrong? Where's the women? And so there's the women that sit in the background. They're the ones that know the stuff, but it's wrong for them to be there. And there's a lot of these sort of promotion. What do you call them? Like these girls that give you flyers and things, scantily dressed, and that's very common, particularly in industries like mining, which is so sort of male dominated. And that is a real shock to British people, particularly men and women both. They don't understand it. They think this is so like 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't really see that very often now at UK shows.
Well, you don't see it here in Uruguay, for example. You don't see it in Argentina. But then you go to a country like Chile, like Peru, definitely Colombia, and it's such a shock. So even for us, it's different. So you have to be prepared for those sort of things. Yeah.
We've got loads of good advice from you there, but if you had one top tip for anybody coming out to exhibit, what would that be?
Listen. Just listen. Just go to a show and just don't worry so much about the actual price list or the product or does it look good, and just go out there and just talk to people and just listen, almost research the market at the show and see what people have to say. The value of that knowledge from people that live every day in the market that you're targeting is so precious. There's no amount of desk research that you can do that will match that. So when you come, just come, with an open mind and willing to listen. That'll be my top tip.
It's brilliant to hear that. I know there was a bit of research done recently that said one of the top complaints from visitors going to trade shows is that they just weren't listened to and they were just sold at. And trade shows just aren't really about selling. They're about listening and finding solutions to that visitor's problems and helping them find a way through whatever issues they're experiencing. So good to hear you back that up. So some fantastic advice in there for any businesses that are thinking of making the leap into Latin America. It sounds quite exciting. I'm thinking of going and booking my plane ticket. Definitely, it sounds like a great place to be. But if people want to get hold of you, Gabby, and get some more help and support from you, how can they get in touch with you?
I would just look on our website. It's sunnyskysolutions.co.uk. There's the contact details there. They can have a look at the blog as well. I put a lot of love and care to write about topics that are relevant to UK businesses. A lot of the topics from a blog are about, answering questions that the British companies have asked. And I do discuss a lot of trade shows as well, some sort of cultural issues around them, but also I review some of them, particularly around mining, construction, energy, agriculture, food and drink. There's a lot of precious information. You can sign up for the newsletter as well. But it's all about the long-term relationship. It's all about doing business in a region that thinks about people and thinks very much long-term.
Brilliant. Well, if anybody missed it, that is Gabby's blog on sunnyskysolutions.co.uk, or if you can't find that, get in touch with us and we will pass on Gabby's details for you. But thank you so much for your time today. There's a huge amount of information there. I know our listeners will be feeling like they've got real value out of that. So thank you so much. And good luck with all your future travels.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So hopefully you enjoyed that conversation with Gabby. She's a real source of support and will help any business who's looking to get out to Latin America, or just any business at all. She loves working with people. So if you want her contact details, do get in touch with us, but you can find her at Sunny Sky Solutions, either online or on Twitter. Coming up in the next episode in a couple of weeks, we are speaking to Emma Cartmel, and Emma is director of the CHS Group, which some of you may know is a fantastic organisation that works to connect venues with event organisers. But Emma is speaking specifically about how exhibitors can generate a better ROI. So all the things we're really, really passionate about and talk a lot about to our clients and delegates in our workshops, but it's good to hear somebody else who's very influential in the industry who also agrees with us. So watch out for that episode coming from Emma in a couple of weeks. We're really excited to be working with some fantastic new clients this year. So we've just agreed to work with Automechanica in Birmingham. So if you're exhibiting at Automechanica this year, we are going to be working with you on your exhibitor training. So please get in touch if we can help you out with your trade show trouble. And we've also got an exciting programme of new workshops and courses coming up soon, so keep an eye on the website for that. As always, we'd love to hear from you and hear what your plans are for 2019. So get in touch if you've got a trade show trouble that you need solving, or if you want us to focus on any particular aspect of exhibiting through a podcast episode. In the meantime, have a great couple of weeks. Hope your plans are coming well together. And don't forget to head over to www.inspiringexhibitors.com for all the latest news, advice and information from the world of exhibitions.
If you'd like more information about our book, The Exhibitionist, future podcasts and newsletters, please remember to pop over to inspiringexhibitors.com, where you'll be able to find all the relevant information. Once again, thank you for listening.